The First Amendment to our Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Welcome to Speak Up, a celebration of the First Amendment. This is presented by Great Falls Rising. My name is Tim Hodges. I'll be your facilitator for tonight's event. So we're going to begin with the presentation of the American flag and the Pledge of Allegiance delivered by the Scouts of BSA Scouting Troop 110, newly chartered by the YWCA. As you are able, please rise.
Color guard, attention. Audience, attention. Color guard, forward, march. Color guard, please post the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard dismissed. Audience at ease.
All right, a big round of applause for the Scouts of Troop 110. Thank you, ladies. So let's start with the ground rules for you speakers. You're going to have 3 minutes at the microphone. When you begin, please introduce yourself and identify if you are representing an organization or are just speaking on your own behalf. At 30 seconds and 15 seconds before time is up, our timer right down front, hold your hand up so they can see, will be showing you a placard with 30 seconds and 15 seconds so that you know time is winding down. And just like at the Academy Awards, when you hear the music come up, your time is done. We've got a ton of speakers. We want everyone to have a chance to be heard. So as I call each speaker up, I'm also going to call the standby speaker, or the next speaker in line, and I would like that speaker, the standby speaker, to go to the bullpen right over here in front of the banner so that we can just move things right along, because we've got a lot to hear tonight, so we're going to move things right along. We have some thank yous we want to share. Thanks to KGPR, Great Falls Public Radio, and the Electric GF, Great Falls Tribune, for publicizing the event. A big thanks to the board of Great Falls Rising. So Great Falls Rising is a nonpartisan but progressive movement that is working to improve the quality of civil discourse in our community. Would the board members of Great Falls Rising please stand up and be recognized? And of course, most importantly, thank you to all of our speakers, because you are the reason that we are here, and we are anxious to hear what you have to say. So, a few points that need to be addressed at an event of this nature. Great Falls Rising is making this event possible, but they take no responsibility or make any endorsement of the remarks on the part of any speaker. And while we are not, while we are not going to be censoring any speakers tonight, we do ask that you try to maintain a spirit of civility and recognize that we are at a public park, and try to keep the profanity to a minimum. So, Great Falls Rising operates from donations. Our cost of rental of the band shell and having the electricity turned on tonight was $75. Now, we have some Great Falls Rising people that are going to be, right now, are going to start moving around through the crowd with this basket. If you could kick in $1 or $2 or $3 or $10 to cover the cost of the electricity and the band shell rental tonight, that would really help us continue to do these sorts of events in the future. So, before the speechifying begins, we're going to have a brief program announcement by board member Art Dolman. Art, where are you? All right, come forward, Art. And while he is speaking, maybe our first speaker, Sandy Filipowicz, would get in the bullpen, and Jim Humphrey be on the ready, because you are going to be speaking here in about 4 or 5 minutes. So, all right, you two, that's enough. Come on.
Excuse me, I'm Art Dolman. Can you hear me? Good, good.
Closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic. Oh, now I can hear myself. Okay. Say, well, first of all, I'd like to make an announcement as that you know that I'm an immigrant, and I've been around here for now ever since 1951. And I'm also a Korean War vet because I served as a Dutch citizen in the United States military. But I'm also very pleased, and I want to thank the board members for giving me the opportunity as a historian to talk about our next 2 meetings. That is the one on September, and it has to deal with the Mueller report, and I want to talk about Russia and how the Russians are influencing our election. And I'm extremely worried about that because nothing is being done is to counter that by our government. And so here we go into a new election. So that's why I want to talk about the Russians, because I studied them ever since World War II when I was a citizen and lived in occupied Holland by the Germans, and we went through hell. And also I see this again today emerging in this country, that I'm beginning to see that perhaps that we are confronted with a civil war. And we need to talk about that, and that is why I like to talk about the Russians, because if you know your opponent, your enemy, the battle is halfway won, and that is what Napoleon said. But then on October the 24th, I'd like to talk very much about the Mueller report again, but it's the second part of his debate, the discussion that he has, and that deals with our Constitution, and also, of course, is what's going on in Washington, D.C. And so that is, so the 2 dates at the next meeting in September on the 24th. And if you're interested in that, please do so. And then the next one is done on October the 27th, no, the 29th, excuse me. Gosh, I'm confused already with all the information. But I'll talk with you later then about another thing that concerns me very much. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Art. And now we welcome our first speaker, Sandy Filipowicz.
Good evening. I'm Sandy Filipowicz from the YWCA, Great Falls. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about more myself than the YWCA. I've seen roughly half of this big world that we live in, and there's no place that I would rather be than right here in Gibson Park, Great Falls, Montana, in the United States of America. And I hope that you feel the same way. The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights gives us tremendous fundamental freedoms. Isn't that a beautiful thing? We can practice our religion or not practice our religion, gather like this for discussions, and even march in protest. My cards are sticking together. But what I'm most grateful for when we talk about this First Amendment in the Bill of Rights is all people can practice their religion, not just me. They can question our government, and none can, quote, cause a breach of peace or cause violence. And that is a big part of what I believe. This all and none dichotomy is not always easy for we humans. We like having things in common, we like being in the majority, and we like promoting our opinions and beliefs, like I am now. And I think that's why we're all here tonight. But I'm challenging you tonight to actually talk to someone that has a different opinion from you, because I truly believe that if we have conversations that are difficult and challenging for us, that is how we will solve a lot of our issues in this country. I think that we have a lot to fight for, and I think we have a lot to be grateful for. So I also want to say that if those conversations were not always had, I do not believe that our forefathers would have even put a pen to paper in our Bill of Rights. That's the way that everything has gotten done in this country. Finally, I'd like to end with 2 quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. that address religion and freedom of speech. The first one is, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. That's one of my favorites. The second one is, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Thank you very much.
All right, here we go. Jim Humphrey is up next. Lucretia Humphrey, please report to the bullpen and get warmed up.
Good evening, friends. I'm Jim Humphrey. I'm here speaking only for myself. I'm here tonight to talk about climate change. As most of you know, sitting in this audience, and as a strong majority of the American public knows, climate change is real. Climate change is human caused. It's harder, though, to acknowledge what I'm about to say as a reality. Also hard for me. Climate change is an existential threat to the survival of the human species and of the biosphere that has co-evolved with us and that is so dear and precious to us, God's creation. How can I make such a drastic statement? What is my source of authority? I don't stay up at night reading scientific journals, believe me. But all my life I've read the mainstream press. And currently the New York Times, the Economist magazine, the Atlantic Monthly magazine. Mainstream press means editors who demand that their reporters have sources for every factual statement made in their report, and who require that the reporters strive to be impartial and objective, as difficult as that is for us as humans. Mainstream press means not a propaganda outlet. And the mainstream press, and particularly the New York Times, currently has almost weekly reports about climate change that are, frankly, very frightening. And I have to ask myself, as I now look at this world, a world with an altered reality, where normality is out the window, and where everything I now see, I see through the lens of climate change, I have to ask myself, what purpose is left for me in my life? What still gives me meaning and direction? And I have come up with only one answer, which still provides joy and a sense of purpose for me, and that is to be an ally of life. And that means an ally of all people, including especially those who disagree with me. It means to be an ally of all the life of the biosphere, and it means, above all, humility. Because look at us. We've messed up. We've really screwed up. We don't know so much, do we? We need to shut up and listen up to each other. And if we want to, part of my fear is that the climate crisis is going to manage humanity more than humanity is going to manage the climate crisis. And if that happens, I want to sit close, for me personally, to that anchor of purpose of being an ally of life. I want all of us, both individually but even more important, collectively, to go out determined to be a friend and a supporter and nurturer of the life of the planet that is so precious to us all. Thank you.
All right, and next up, Lucretia Humphrey. John Schneider, please report to the bullpen.
So one Humphrey after another Humphrey, huh? So he gets us all scared. No, gets us motivated. But meanwhile, I want to share something from my Quaker beliefs. My Quaker community does not believe in creeds and does not have different things that we have to believe. But we do try to get together about every 10 years and share with where we're at. And this is from the Northwest Quakers. And it is called Be Not Afraid. Be not afraid is a phrase that appears frequently in the Bible and still speaks to us today. When those in power use fear to manipulate and control, causing abuse, violence, and oppression, it can be challenging for us to live and act in accord with Quaker values. You've heard about Quaker values over the years. Some of us try to go in that direction. Sometimes it's pretty hard. But we have those values. Living in a time of fear can corrode our ability to listen and respond to the Spirit. Early Quakers were persecuted for practicing their faith. They showed love and courage in the face of public ridicule, confiscation of their property, arrest and imprisonment, and sometimes even death. Although friends today are blessed with the freedom to worship openly, examples of their courageous witness of the early friends are an inspiration to us facing oppressive social and political conditions. Fear and the sense of vulnerability it often brings can separate us from each other and from the big Spirit. It can cloud our judgment and diminish our abilities to discern and learn and grow. As each of us grows in this Spirit, we are called to let go of our fears of making mistakes, of not being approved, of needs going unmet, of conflict, illness, loneliness, and diminishment, and of not being perfect or even good enough. We cannot avoid our fears by attempting to control people to make things turn out the way we want. Living in the Spirit with a supportive, faithful fellowship gives us courage and guidance to let our lives speak, even when we are afraid, and helps us turn toward each other and toward the light. When fear threatens our resolve, God's love comforts and strengthens us. When we trust our inner guide, we can walk through our fears and come out in love. Thank you.
Next up, John Schneider, Melissa Smith to stand by.
Good evening. My name is John Schneider. I'm from Havre. These remarks represent only my views. First off, is Greg Gianforte out there in the audience? Can you hear me now? Is that better? What? Like that? Is that better? Okay. Is this better? All right. Is Greg Gianforte out in the audience? Greg Gianforte, look around. He might be under some rock out there. Well, Mr. Congressman Gianforte, I'll be up here for the next 3 minutes now. I don't have my glasses on, but if you want to come up here and try to knock me to the ground, feel free to try. I wrote a poem for this occasion about the immigration business and the detention of children in the South, and my wife and I would like to dedicate this poem to Kathy Hodges, who is the one person who represents more than anyone in spirit and action Christian love and charity. And the poem I wrote about this terrible immigration business is called The Girl in the Cage, and it goes like this. She was the one they forgot about, the one we all forgot about. She was in the back of the cage, really just a bundle of clothes. After 4 days, she just dried up and turned to dust. When a strong wind came across the Rio Grande, her dust blew north. A housewife in Kansas wondered why her laundry was dirty. Parents in Des Moines wondered why their children were now brown and would not be served at the local Dairy Queen. And Jimmy Carter had a dream about the Shah of Iran and could not get his Bible open. And when the dust reached the White House, the degenerate president, fat and greasy with lies, mumbled over his phone in the growing darkness. And in Flint and Newark, all the lead disappeared from the water. And Michelle Obama's garden flourished, and she told Oprah and Ellen how it was the dust, and that when her cucumbers came in, all the soldiers would come home from Iran and Afghanistan. And when Barack stepped outside, he turned white as a sheet. And when Barack Obama stepped outside, he turned white as a sheet, except no one noticed because he was white all along, and everybody knew it. And the little girl's parents, who had been sent back to Guatemala weeks earlier, knew their girl was dead, and they wept. They wept tears. And those tears are the only thing that will put out the fires in the Amazon. And all the children we killed with our drones held hands, but it wasn't enough. And a football coach in Montana, masquerading as a history teacher, assigned his class to write 70,000 reasons why the U.S. needed to drop the bomb on Hiroshima. And Maya Lin realized her wall was 40 times too small. And not one person here in this fair city, including myself, can say the names of any children we killed in Hanoi by our bombs in 1968. And until we say their names, we will never be whole. And my student, who came home from Iraq, now divorced, now never to see his own children, now will never stop shaking. And when you take off your pants in the airport, you are not safer. And when you wave the flag, you are not safer. And my friends, when we take little children and lock them in cages away from our hearts, we are not greater or safer. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Melissa Smith. Tom Moore to stand by. Tom Moore to stand by.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Smith, and I grew up in Havre, and so I'm very pleased to be surrounded by other Haverites, even though I'm making my home now in Great Falls, and I'm speaking for myself. We look to leaders for the revolution. We don't look in the mirror. We wait for mass demonstrations before we tentatively join in. We say we're not political because politics makes us uncomfortable. We don't vote because all politicians are the same. We go about our lives just looking for shelter. There's a storm coming, dark times. And yet for those engaging in our world, we are demoralized by the silence, the inaction of the majority. Where is their outrage? Why won't they wake up? Frustration, anger, tiredness, oh so very tired. Still persist. Why? Perhaps because there's a little four-letter word that dares speak. That word is hope. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. That's Desmond Tutu. We have to be that light. To care, to resist, to dare to hope. Right now, Well, that's like being willing to be metaphorically punched in the face every single day. Because we can't control people. We can't control the outcome of any movement, environmental, political, social, or justice. Still, we must live the ethical and moral lives in order to live our best lives. We must be the light that we want to see in the world. So I take a deep breath, and then I sing. And I find hope, resilience, and persistence. So sing with me. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. I wake up to the sound of music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be, let it be. Shalom.
Next up, Tom Moore, Jacob Bachmeyer to stand by.
Good evening, everybody. I am Tom Moore. I'm the new superintendent of Great Falls Public Schools. And I'd like to thank you for gathering tonight and talking about this important topic of speech. And in our public schools, starting tomorrow morning at about 7:30, the buses will arrive and 10,000 students will get off those buses and walk through our doors. And we have 180 days to work with these students from preschool all the way through high school and early college, and try to model for them and try to exhibit what civil discourse is all about. To try to encourage them, to try to teach them, to try to mold them into what will be citizens for tomorrow. Our vision is that when our students are engaged in classrooms today, they're preparing themselves for life tomorrow. And if we're successful in that vision, then they will be contributing members of our democracy here in the United States. And so it's a huge challenge. Many of our kids grow up in homes where these things are not modeled for them. And they see quite the contrary examples, where they don't have opportunities to be nurtured and to be loved and to be cared for. And so it's the responsibility then of our citizens in this community to walk alongside our families that are sometimes dysfunctional, to work with our educators in the formal education system to support these young people so that they might thrive. Last spring, I don't know how many of you attended the Converge plays that our students put on at Great Falls High School and around the community. But it was an opportunity for many of you here were a part of helping to make that happen, and I know that Tim Jungren was videotaping that, and we'll show that again, I guess, some point in this community this year. But the point of that was that students got to tell their stories, the barriers and the challenges that they encounter as they try to grow up in this community. And they're not unlike kids across the United States that have similar challenges, but they got to tell their stories here in Great Falls. And I think for some of us, it was an eye-opener. I think that there are some people in this community that don't realize the plight of our youth here in Great Falls and what many of our children are up against. And so it was a rally call, as far as I'm concerned, for our community to step up and to help our youth thrive, to address the issues of homelessness, food insecurities, abuse, neglect, addictions, mental illness. And I hope and pray that this next year we'll see a turnaround in this community for our youth, and that youth will be able to thrive in Great Falls once again. Thank you for listening to me. Have a good evening.
Next up, Jacob Bachmeyer, Art Dolman to stand by.
Well, hello, Great Falls. I hope you're all doing well tonight. My name is Jacob Bachmeyer. I am a legislator from the city of Havre, and I just want to give a shout out to all my constituents. I see several of you in the audience, but in particular, I want to give a shout out to Carol Ortman. I really appreciate all that you've done in the city of Havre. But the reason that I'm here tonight is that I recently took a job with an organization called Big Sky 55 Plus. And Big Sky 55 Plus is an organization that advocates for Montanans 55 and older, and we're looking to make a difference in the lives and the future generations. We primarily focus on healthcare related issues and economic security, but we have a pretty diverse platform, and I encourage you to check it out on our website. But I just want to make you guys aware of a couple upcoming events. We'll be having an office opening party here in Great Falls at our office at Paris Gibson. That'll be on the 11th of September at 6:30 p.m. and we'll have our executive director there, and Ken Toole, who is the chairman of our board. And then we also have an event coming up on October 15th, and that will be at the C.M. Russell Museum at 6 p.m. We are going to be having an event on Social Security. We'll have an author there named Nancy Altman. She's written books on the past and the future of Social Security, and I think it'll be a pretty good event. But I'll be walking around the audience tonight, and I'll have a sign-up sheet if you want to get more information or schedule a meeting with me. I would love to take folks out to coffee and talk about what you think you would like to see our organization do in this community in particular. But I also have some handouts here that have some upcoming event information, and also we have a call to action on prescription drugs and having you reaching out to our congressional delegation. But there's some information on that handout if you're interested in reaching out to our delegation. But thank you so much for all that you do, and thank you for having me.
Next up, Mr. Art Dolman. Greg Penske to stand by. Greg Penske to stand by, please.
It's nice to see you, and thank you for coming. And I hope that you can hear me. I see some head shaking and so on. I also want to tell you that I'm a historian, and that is I specialized in European and Asian history. And so I also was, during my retirement for 11 years, that I taught military officers in the Army and in the Air Force about war and how it goes, of course, is with history. And therefore, of course, is the Articles of War are very important, because an officer who goes on duty and goes to battle with his troops is accountable for their behavior, whether he knows it or not. And he gets court-martialed if he makes mistakes. Speaking as a historian, I wish to inform you that for the first time in our national history for more than 200 years, one president in this century, the 21st century, is charged with war crimes by 147 nations. That is a lot. And the second president, Mr. Trump, will be the second one to be so charged when he ordered the government employees to kill children and to remove others from their parents when they sought asylum in our country. Let me go back to the first one again, to President George Bush. First of all, on January 12, 2016, he canceled his trip to Switzerland because the Swiss government was pressured by its population to arrest George Bush and to send him to The Hague for the International Tribunal for War Crimes in regard to the treatment of civilians and military prisoners in Iraq. After 2 years of investigation, it was the Kuala Lumpur War Commission out of Kuala Lumpur on November the 22nd, 2011, that found George Bush and Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, were guilty of crimes against peace, crimes against humanity, and genocide as a result of their roles in the war in Iraq, and it was also recommended that they would be tried in the International Tribunal for War Crimes in The Hague, Netherlands. In case of the second one, President Trump has also been in violation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This means that there is another international treaty that has been signed by some 195 nations. And that also, you have to realize that our country is the only one that has refused to sign that agreement. Since the Latin American nations are well aware of the treatment of children ordered by President Trump of the United States, it would not be surprising for us that after 2020, when he returns to civilian life, that there are numerous nations that also want him to go to The Hague for trial. And it is all very serious business. And the reason I talk that way is that for 5 years of German occupation, I lost 7 of my friends who were gassed at Auschwitz in Poland. Every time that I drive by that place in a car or by train, I stop and go to the camp that is now a museum on the Holocaust suffered by the Dutch people, and particularly our Jewish neighbors. I stopped there, and next week I hope to convince my brother-in-law that when Andre and I are in Holland, that for our last time in our lives, that we're going to see that monument again and look at the train rails and see how they left Holland and never came back. This year, a few weeks ago, when there was a riot and also a shooting in Sao Paulo, Texas, it all came back to me again. This horrible suffering that people do in time of war, and we must put a stop to that. And I thank you very much.
Next up, sorry folks. Next up, Greg Penske.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Penske. I'm a district judge here in Great Falls. First of all, I want to acknowledge the scouts that are here tonight. As an Eagle Scout myself, it always makes me so proud to see the scouts learning about citizenship and communication and building character that lasts a lifetime. So please give another round of applause to the scouts that are here. I'm here to talk about an issue that's very important to me. There are 2.6 million veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. 1 in 5 of those veterans suffers from PTSD or major depression. Over 300,000 of those veterans suffer from a traumatic brain injury. 1 in 6 of those veterans suffers from a substance use disorder. And most profoundly, 22 veterans a day, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. There were more veterans that committed suicide last year than were killed in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We took these human beings that were healthy and strong and brave, and we put them into a situation that we know profoundly changes human beings. And the suicide rates alone should be justification for us to stand up and do what's right for these veterans. Left untreated, these issues that I mentioned, they lead to homelessness, unemployment, and sometimes even arrest. Right now, there are 700,000 veterans in jails and prisons across the United States. Many of them are being incarcerated for issues and conditions that are directly related to their combat. But we provide an alternative to that. We provide a Veterans Treatment Court to help those veterans get the benefits that they earn and the help that they need. By providing structure and accountability, we're able to reconnect those veterans to the values and lessons that form the basis of their honorable service to our country. Without treatment, these veterans are left separated from their families, without jobs, and in an ongoing situation from which they may never recover. But right now, there are 11,000 veterans receiving this life-saving treatment through Veterans Treatment Courts like ours. I have a fundamental, principled belief that our courts don't exist simply to dispense justice. They exist to make the community a better, safer place. And we're fulfilling that principle every single day, 2 blocks from here. Justice is not just unless we as a community stand up and restore what was lost to make those veterans whole. Thank you.
Our next speaker, David Saslov. Stand by, Arlene Reichert. Arlene, stand by. David Saslov next.
Good evening. I'm David Saslov. I'm representing only my own views tonight. About 5 years ago, I had just finished singing a solo in my church choir when a girl, maybe 10 years old, came up to me. She knew I was a musician, and she said, "You know, David, I can play the theme song to Hawaii Five-0 on my double bass that I'm practicing." And I said, "Wow, that's really good." You know, they rebooted Hawaii Five-0 about 10 years ago. And I said to her, "You know when that show first came on television?" And she went, "Was it 19-something?" And I went, "Yeah, let's just leave it at that. It was 19-something. That's right." And at that point, I kind of felt my age a little bit, but I realized that more and more we're surrounded by folks that never lived in 19-something. And it got me to thinking that when I stopped for dinner just before we came tonight, there was a little counter over at the pit stop that shows your date of birth if you're legal to drink. And we did a little math, my wife, Melissa Let It Be Smith, and I, and we figured out that in 16 months, every single person born in 19-something will be of legal drinking age, which means that already everyone born in 19-something is already of legal voting age. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if we could apply a sort of a new 80-20 rule to get 80% of those who are born in 20-something to vote in 2020. And I think we can all walk away from this event realizing that so many new voters are out there who may not realize the importance of the franchise. And I would ask each of you, if you encounter a group of folks born in the early 2000s or the very late 1990s who may or may not have already voted, as I hope all of you who are here today have done several times in your adult lives, and make sure that they realize that we don't really have a country for much longer if we don't exercise that franchise. In the old vein of use it or lose it, I think the founders of our country realized that we only can course correct if there are multiple captains at the helm. So I would ask, in this upcoming election, which is the 49th, I believe, or 59th, I believe, excuse me, 59th of our country, of our new experiment in democracy, please canvass those youngsters in your midst, here tonight, in your schools, in your neighborhoods, and see if you can get 4 out of 5 of them, or 80% of them, to vote in 2020. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Arlene Reichert. On standby, Kim Spurn Agofsky. Kim Spurn Agofsky to stand by.
Help from my daughter here. My name is Arlene Reichert, otherwise known as the Bridge Lady. Guess what I'm going to talk about? The historic 10th Street Bridge, the love of my life. Actually, I've been interested in preservation long before the bridge. Preservation is important, and Great Falls is very distinctive. We have so many wonderful things, not only the beautiful river running through it, but we have buildings like the courthouse, and we have Paris Gibson Square, we have Ursuline Center. You know, if we tear down all these old structures, we might as well change our name to Generic Falls instead of Great Falls, because we'd be like every other city in the country. We are very unique. And you know, I was inspired today especially because I had a friend, only the old timers here will remember Dorothy Bond. This is Dorothy Bond's birthday. She would have been 115 years old today, and she was a preservationist. In fact, when we started to save the bridge, and it was getting pretty nasty, they threatened to blow it up. She said, "I'm chaining myself to that bridge, I'll go right with that bridge." You know, and of course they didn't blow it up, but it came within 6 days of being blown up. All this started in the saving of the bridge in October 1994. There was a front page article, and all it said was, a new vehicle bridge will be built, and the old bridge will be torn down. One sentence in that long article. And we said, why? Why tear it down? Why not take the same money destined for demolition and fix it up? For pedestrians, it has architectural splendor with all those arches. It's very unique, you know. Of all of the bridges in this really Great Plains states, ours is the longest. It's 1,130 feet. Those beautiful arches, and it reflects in the water. It's just lovely, but it almost went down. And the story goes on. In 1996, a group of us got together and we formed a nonprofit. That's Preservation Cascade. And that's when the effort really started. And that's when the trouble started too. A lot of people wanted the bridge to go down, and we wound up in court. Well, fortunately, the court system decided to assign someone by the name of Judge Harry Pragerson, who was a preservationist from California. And he saw the merit in keeping that bridge. And so what he did as mediator, get together with the court, they decided, yes, that bridge should be saved. But there's an interesting factor, no local tax money. And so Preservation Cascade had to raise all the money, and guess what? We've raised over $1.5 million since then, without any local tax dollars, but with grants, of course, and with donations. And we always have a project going on, and we're starting one now with We have a beautiful bridge replica with little Yogo sapphires showing the lights, and that'll be for sale. And we hope that we'll be able to have a big party. Now, just one more thing. August 20th, 2020, about a year from now, when the bridge is 100, you're all invited to a big party because we are going to celebrate saving that bridge, and I'll only be 94 then.
All right, our next speaker, Spurn Agofsky, Aaron Merchant to stand by, and I need a brief technical timeout, so just stand easy, folks. Hello, check, test, 1, 2. Sorry about that, folks. We got a little problem here. There we go. Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Okay. All right, there.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Spurn Agofsky, and I'm sure, like a lot of you here, I wear a lot of different hats. So today, the hats that I am wearing is a Get Fit volunteer, a United Way employee, and a mom of a very active and vibrant child. And furthermore, I'm a person who cares about the community that we live in and wants it to be as amazing as this child right here. So I think something that really inspired me to be here is that if you pay too much attention to social media, even local, comments on Facebook and blogs and things like that, it'd be pretty easy to feel kind of down about our community and about the future of our community and what lies ahead for kids like this. But I'm here to tell you that there's actually a lot of really great stuff going on that I happen to know about and be a part of. And what I want to focus on is something called the Building Active Communities Initiative. And it's an effort to create active spaces. And what does that mean? Active means both physically active, but it also means a place that people want to be in, right? Like this park. And so 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to take part in some training and learn what it takes to be an active space. And then we were kind of charged with the goal of making more active spaces in our community. And so there's a group of volunteers right here in our community that are doing just that. We're starting out with small things. You may have noticed the flowers and the fish and the keyboard and the music notes painted on our crosswalks downtown. All done by volunteers and all done with donated paint and supplies. And what I want to tell you, this is one example of how our community can get better with volunteers and just kind of effort, basically. So something like the crosswalks, you think, oh, it's pretty, it's nice, it's art, it adds a little color downtown. But I want to tell you what it also does. It also inspires us to walk. It inspires traffic to slow down, which again makes it easier for us to walk, which obviously makes us healthier. If we have more people walking downtown, when you're walking by a store, you're probably going to shop there, at least a greater chance that you're going to shop there than you would if you were driving by that store, right? So that helps our downtown businesses. Beyond that, it inspires young people to see our community as vibrant and active, and so that helps attract young people who come here to work, right? We all want that. We all know as business owners that helps our community. So I think it's a great opportunity for anyone who wants to get involved. This is just a small example of what we can do to make our community better. And so if anybody wants to get involved, we meet the first Friday of every month at 9 a.m. in the chamber. And so I would invite anybody to get involved, to be active, to start being yes people, and to enjoy our future. Thank you.
All right, next up, Aaron Merchant, Rich Liebert to stand by. Rich to stand by.
I'm Aaron Merchant. I am the president of Get Fit Great Falls. Happy to follow Kim with some of our initiatives. I want you to all sit back and think about when you were a kid. What did you do with your free time? What did you live for? I lived for a good game of flashlight tag, playing hide and seek at Lincoln Park. Sorry, that's my child. Riding my bike around town, and of course, coming home when the street lights were on. I was a free-range kid, and so was everyone else in my neighborhood, and I'm sure many of you were too. Unfortunately, this is not the way that many of our kids are growing up today. They're screen kids, living their lives indoors, and their health is suffering because of it. Current data suggests that we're having real problems getting our kids to meet physical activity recommendations. Cascade County has higher obesity rates and higher death rates from diabetes, heart problems, and other obesity-related causes than the state average. While Montana ranks better than many states, the percentage of obese people in our state continues to increase from 9% in 1994 to 29% today. Everybody talks about childhood obesity, but the underlying issue is driven by physical inactivity and poor nutrition. Simply telling our kids to exercise, or adults for that matter, doesn't work. It's not enough. We need to cultivate a culture in our community where the healthy choice is the easy choice. How can we help people be more physically active as part of their daily life? Get Fit members heard the term free-range kids from walking and wellness expert Mark Fenton. He talked about the dramatic change in the daily activity of our kids over the last 30 to 40 years. When parents are asked why they don't encourage their kids to go outside and be more active, they often say, well, it's just not safe. I don't feel comfortable letting my kid go ride their bike outside. Interestingly, when parents are asked, what has been the increase in violent crimes against kids in the last 30 or 40 years, people don't know the answer. Is there really this great risk out there? Mark went to find out. In the 1960s, nationally, nearly 40% of kids were walking or biking to school. Now that number is closer to 10%. Over that time span, there's no evidence of a dramatic increase in violence against kids or incidents of kids being plucked off the street. There may be a change in how the media handles it, but as far as actual risk to kids, it's much more likely that the greater risk, one that has occurred over the same 30 or 40-year time span, is that childhood obesity rates have tripled. So what can we do? Well, I only have 15 seconds left. There's a lot to do, but put it simply, let's be free-range adults. Let's model the behavior we want to see in our kids. We set the example, so let's take every opportunity to be out on foot or on a bike, to walk during lunch, or just swing on a swing. Let's show our kids how to play and find joy in being free-range. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker, Rich Liebert. Ken Small to stand by. Ken Small, please stand by.
Sound check?
You're good.
Okay. Thanks, Great Falls Rising. And as an old Eagle Scout, I'd like to thank the Scout Troop. I don't care if you're girls or boys, because my mother was a den mother, so it didn't matter to me who's leading out there, boys or girls, because we need leaders. I don't care if you have colonels, commander-in-chiefs, woman. How many of you know what the national crisis for farmers is? The suicide rate for farmers is higher than the average population. It's bad enough veterans have that high statistic as well, as Judge Penske pointed out. But why are farmers reaching this crisis? What do they have to pass on to their generations? How many here ever stacked hay, fixed fence, moved cows for a neighbor? I see a few hands, but we're a rural state. But we're still disconnected, and we have to have a conversation between urban America, rural America, so the people who are isolated, they're out in Geraldine and other places, they don't sense that we folks, I live in the country, but city folks don't get it. Now, let me ask you this, how much does a combine cost? Probably more than your house, $345,000, right, Ari? for all that equipment. I'm looking at Harry Mitchell, a great farmer out here. I go by his place all the time. It all costs money, and prices go down. And this toxic trade war we're engaged in, and today I call Steve Daines and say, you got to do something. We can't export Montana beef. I'm a cattle rancher. That's money to me. And when you can't pay your bills in the fall, and when you can't buy new equipment from Frontline Ag, north of town, you can't go to an implement dealer, guess what? They don't have money. Then they lay people off. Then that affects the small towns as well. Now, agriculture is getting decimated right now.
If you have whoever's got that pickup right in front of my silver van boots, like that.
There's a vehicle blocking your van.
Right in front of that silver van over there.
Somebody blocked in a silver van. Can you move it, please? Our public service announcement, please move your vehicle.
What is the blocking vehicle, sir? What kind of vehicle is blocking? A pickup truck blocking a silver van in right the other side of that trash can. So it's this big Chevy, a Ford pickup truck, this dark Ford pickup truck. See if we could go move that, please. Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, let me back on track. Now, what do we do in Montana? We don't eat all the food we produce. We export. Pasta Montana. Where do those products go? It goes to Japan. And what did the president say about the wheat we send to Japan? Oh, they're just buying it out of sympathy so we can trade things. That angers people. We're proud of our wheat. Our barley in Fairfield, where does that go? We send a lot of it to Mexico. What do they make there? Beer. And it comes back to us. Our beef goes north to Canada. So our trade, free enterprise is essential. We can't cripple that. Farming and ranching is tough enough. We had a very brutal winter. We lost a lot of livestock in February, but that goes with the territory, so we can't complain, right, Harry? We just live with it. But when we have unforced errors from the White House and bad policy, self-inflicted wounds, it does not help our country. Now, agriculture is being decimated. In the Roman army, when the legion didn't perform, the commander would wipe out every 10th man. That's what decimated means. Right now, I would say 1 out of every 10 farms and ranchers is under financial stress. Bankruptcies are going up. And that leads to suicides. And is that an American value where you try to raise your family for the next generation? So we're looking at those troubles out there. But when we leave and we go out in the great outdoors, when you leave the boundary of the city and you're driving down a county road, right, Jane? We're looking at those family farms and ranchers. They're not getting those big bailouts there. All that's going to the corporate mega farms. Now, the last thing I'll say is two things. The greatest tragedy is for somebody to do nothing because they thought they could only do a little. You can write a letter. You can call Congressman Gianforte. I was at Electric City Coffee, and I was just so angry, I took a piece of toweling out of the bathroom and wrote a letter, handwritten letter, and you get that in the mail for somebody to read. But we got to stay active against not against, or go with our elected officials to take action, do things. And even though you may not have a lot of money, Teddy Roosevelt, also another cattle rancher in North Dakota, said, do what you can with what you have from where you are. Don't give up. Fight for America, fight for rural America. Appreciate those folks out there because they feel like they're lost out there and nobody's watching out for them. Thank you.
Next up, Ken Small, Chris Swanberg to stand by. Chris Swanberg, stand by, please.
Well, good evening. I'm Ken Small. I'm representing old people and the past. 74 years ago, World War II ended. My mom was able to stop working at the control tower at the East Base known as Malmstrom. My dad came home from Okinawa, and Okinawa is still called Okinawa. These people were the greatest generation. These were my parents. And I learned a great deal from them. These people sacrificed so much, their time, their talents, their efforts, everything they had for a cause that they felt was worthy. They helped me understand that great things are made by people that sacrifice great things. And because of them, we have a great nation, we have great communities, we have great families, and we have great schools. That generation always passed a bond. That generation always passed a levy. There wasn't a situation where they wouldn't pay ahead. they always answered positively to, if not me, who? If not now, when? So how's that working out in this day and age? Well, we had to hire a professional group of people to help us pass the bond issue so that we could build some new schools and renovate some old ones. And we place even less value in the people that work in these education factories. We haven't passed a levy for a decade. We've essentially told them that they are of no value. A recent study showed that if we put this on a ballot today, it would not pass. It kind of reminds me of that tune of the 50s. You know how it went? You lost that lovin' feeling. Whoa, 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 whoa. Well, I kind of think that's sort of what's happened. And I feel badly because of it. 74 years ago, I was 6 years old and I was starting my educational career in Great Falls Public Schools at Roosevelt Elementary. And my parents and the parents before them and generations had provided me the greatest opportunity to have a great education. I'm not so sure that that exists in this day and age. I have misgivings when we don't pass levies and we have to fight to get a bond issue. I'm not sure that that spirit of the greatest generation still exists today, but if it does, I hope it'll surface itself. I'd like to close by making these very astute observations. First, be kind to old people. As the days pass quickly, you are going to become one of us soon. The second is I'm going to share information and wisdom from the Oracle of Great Falls. Great Falls has an oracle. The oracle is the popcorn kernel. Yes. And the word of wisdom is the flavor of the month is key. K-E-Y. Kids education, yes. Tasty. Thank you.
Next up, Chris Swanberg. Phyllis Visione to stand by. Phyllis to stand by, please.
Testing, testing. Is my voice being loud and clear? Excellent. Okay. I am a supporter of Moms Demand Action. We are striving to bring about background checks. We are striving for a red flag law legislation. We are now 4 million strong across this nation. We are under the umbrella of Every Town for Gun Safety, which was founded in 2006 by Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And in 2012, after the tragedy of Sandy Hook, I want that to sink in a little bit here. Sandy Hook, we all remember that, but nothing, absolutely nothing was passed in the way of legislation to bring about stronger gun safety measures. We at Moms Demand Action are tired of this. We at Moms Demand Action demand action from our legislators and our representatives who serve us, the people. We are their employers. So, having said that, I would like to bring forth some famous individuals from long ago. They are none other than our founders of our Constitution. And I feel is it appropriate right now, at this time in our history, that we call forth those individuals who helped to frame our Constitution. This first quote comes from Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine is the individual who coined the term the United States of America. He is also the individual who started the Revolutionary War. He wrote 2 pamphlets, Common Sense, and let's see, Common Sense, and what was the other one? Bear with me. The Rights of Man. These 2 pamphlets got the nation going, and as a result, they started the Revolutionary War. So without further ado, this one is directed at Washington. Thomas Paine said, "A government which cannot preserve the peace is no government at all." So, I hope Washington is listening, because as 4 million strong, we are making our voice heard, and we will not give up, we will not give in, until we see stronger, safer gun legislation across this once great nation. Thank you.
Next up, Phyllis Visione. Mark Good to stand by. Mark Good, please stand by.
I have a bad habit of tripping, so. Good evening. I'm Phyllis Visione. I'm a resident of Great Falls, and I live up in the Skyline area. I'd like to thank Great Falls Rising for hosting this evening's soapbox event, a celebration of our First Amendment right of free speech. I'm a bit nervous about speaking to this gathering tonight. However, I believe this is the correct time to express my concern about this issue. So here goes. As a member of the Great Falls community for almost 27 years, and additionally identifying myself as a lesbian, and as such a member of the LGBTQ community, I would like to speak about a concern I have that impacts members of my community. It is the issue our youth face as they begin to question their sexual, biologic identity, and the repercussions they experience when they verbalize to family, friends, church leaders, teachers, counselors, what they are dealing with. They're seeking support, guidance, comfort, and acceptance. But for some, what they receive in return for their honesty and forthrightness is betrayal, exclusion, bullying, loss of love from their family and friends. Some are kicked out of their homes. They lose the roof over their heads and the food from their mouth. They are ostracized in school, in their classrooms, their athletic activities, and extracurricular activities. I believe as a community, all of us, our citizens, our businesses, our churches, and most importantly, our elected officials and our employees of city government must let it be known that we are not a community that accepts discarding and disenfranchising these young members of our community because of who they are, what their sexual identity is, or who they choose to love. I strongly believe that the time has come for the city of Great Falls to do as other communities in this great state have done, to proclaim that we are a city of brotherly and sisterly love, that we support, embrace, and accept our LGBTQ citizens. Discrimination, disenfranchisement, and intolerance will not be considered acceptable behavior by any of our citizens of Great Falls. We must not accept that it is okay for members of our LGBT community to have their emotional and physical health deteriorate into the depths of despair, loneliness, depression, to turn to drug and alcohol abuse to escape their problems, and for some, potentially resorting to suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and possibly for some, successful suicide. The time is now. We must embrace every member of our community and let them know we are equals and we accept them for who they are. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mark Good. Luke Skinner to stand by. Luke to stand by.
Sorry, this is not staying. Well, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me? My name's Mark Good. I live in Great Falls. I want to talk a little bit about public lands. I work part-time for the Montana Wilderness Association, but I am speaking for myself here. Many of it, all of you who use public lands know that these lands, they're lands managed by the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management, are managed for a variety of uses. And that includes everything from wilderness and wildlife to energy, a variety of commercial uses and recreational uses. Now that doesn't mean all uses in all places and not all uses, just because not all uses are compatible. It does mean that some of our public lands are better suited for some uses than others. For example, wilderness only exists in places that have remained relatively wild and undeveloped. Sage grouse need large blocks of sagebrush to survive. Cutthroat trout can only survive in cold and clean waters, and things like oil and gas, they're generally concentrated in a few areas. Now, traditionally, these decisions about where to allow which uses are made by local staff from these agencies who know these landscapes. That has been true in both Republican and Democratic administrations. And while there's often disagreement among the public about how these uses are apportioned across landscapes, there's long been an understanding by land management agencies that decisions are made by local land managers and that they try to strike a balance in use. That is now changing with the Trump administration. And we're seeing it right here with the management of BLM lands in central Montana. Here's an example. Recently, the Bureau of Land Management began a process of revising their management plan that covers about 650,000 acres in central Montana. Local staff identified about 200,000 acres as having wilderness characteristics. And they proposed to manage about half, about 100,000 acres, to protect those wilderness characteristics. But the plan that they proposed was altered by political appointees in Washington, D.C., so that now the BLM is proposing to manage 0 acres to protect wilderness characteristics. And on top of that, they're even proposing to remove protections from places like Square Butte over by Denton, and places in the Judith Mountains that have with sensitive species such as cutthroat trout. Instead of balancing use, almost the entire area is now proposed to be managed for oil and gas extraction, even though the potential is very low. And this isn't just happening in central Montana, but on public lands across the West. This is because the BLM and the Department of Interior are being run by energy lobbyists. The director of the BLM doesn't even support public lands, is proposing to sell public lands, the very lands he is supposed to be caring for. And we need to restore balance in the management of our public lands, and if this administration is allowed another 4 years, we will see more of the same kind of top-down political interference. It's often been said that elections matter. They do, and this one will matter a lot. So please vote.
Our next speaker, Luke Skinner. Sarah Justice to stand by. Sarah Justice, stand by, please.
We good? Yeah, I'm Luke Skinner. It's good to see you all here tonight. How about a little applause for Amara and the dance earlier? Nice to have a little bit of entertainment, isn't it? I'm hearing all these issues here tonight, and it's really quite inspiring. This motto above this trademark that I've had for the last 2 years, spin it, own it, make it yours. Well, in today's society, with our news media, social media, or even among any of us, even our politicians, will take any issue and they spin it. They spin it their own way. And it's up to all of us to stand by what we believe in. I see a lot of the younger people here in the background. Oh, another applause for the Scouts and all. that's our future there. And, well, I'm here just to give everybody a reminder and a message. Remember who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for. Wear it like armor, and that way it can never be used against you. Because in today's society, we are dealing with so much criticism in this country and around the world. So stay true to yourselves on whatever issue you've mentioned here tonight and anything else in the future. Stay strong with that. Because someday this world will be united. I get a little off topic there. Just stand true to yourselves. Stand by your issues. And don't let anybody drag you down. Because, well, having said that, I have issues with Republicans and Democrats and independents. I agree and disagree with President Trump and the Republicans on some of their stuff, and I agree and disagree with AOC plus 3, the squad, and the Democrats. But, hey, who doesn't? But if I could ever meet these people face to face, and I would issue them a challenge to come and speak with people like the ones who have spoken here tonight. You want a war of words or debate the issues? I would invite them to come here to Great Falls and speak with people that I have heard here tonight. Because I think, well, you guys want to spin it, own it, make it yours yourselves? Well, you want a war of words and debate the issues? Come on and listen to the people that we've had here tonight, because you'll get another war of words or debate the issues, whatever you want to call it. Thank you and good night. I gotta go to work.
Our next speaker, Sarah Justice. Nicole Evans to stand by. Nicole Evans, please stand by.
Good evening, everybody. How are you tonight? Thank you so much for coming out. Oh, I need to speak a little louder, just like this, huh? First of all, I want to raise of hands of how many people here have been to a contemporary art museum before. Oh my gosh, I love it. How many artists in the audience tonight? Visual artists, theatrical, all the above, anything along those lines. So great to see you. I recognize many faces. How many of you have been to the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art? Wonderful. So nice to see. My name is Sarah Justice. I'm the Education Director and Interim Executive Director at the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art. I am not only an administrator, I'm a teacher, and most importantly, I'm an artist. I'm a sculptor. I draw. I also paint. My question, just a few questions for you guys to think about. What is contemporary art? Does contemporary art have value? Why should you take the time to look at contemporary art and invest in it? I can go on forever answering those questions. Those questions, are pretty full of depth. But I'm here to tell you that contemporary art has extreme value. It carries great weight because it depicts and reflects on the changing climate of today's society and the world at large. Contemporary art gives us multiple perspectives of culture. It reflects on changes in philosophy, psychology, even science. It is a window into what takes place in the present moment, time, and space. From an educational point of view, art, be it visual, theatrical, musical, or literary, or even film, is more important than ever to keep alive in our school systems today. Children and adults alike need a voice, and through the arts is one of the safest places to share your voice. Our children need the space to create, to think abstractly, to look internally and externally then respond. Children need to be challenged with problem solving, self-reflection, and the motivation to complete projects and bring ideas to life. Art gives students the platform to do just that. Art can teach children empathy from a very young age. Support the arts in schools. Help it not be taken away. It is being stripped very quickly throughout our culture. That's frightening. But I can tell you this, art will never stop. It will always thrive, but we need your support to keep it within our school systems. This is so very important to the health and the growth of your children's minds and souls. I want to invite you to come out to the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art, September 14th, that's a Saturday, for our annual Arts on Fire event. It's a festival, free to the public. We have amazing musical and theatrical performances, art activities, and games set up on the square's lawn. And that same day is our 22nd annual art auction. It is open to people for first-time buyers, come, or avid art collectors. Please support the square, support the arts in your community. I would love to see you and have more of a conversation about contemporary art and what it means. Come to our museum anytime. It is free to the public. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Nicole Evans, Tanner Ripley to stand by. Tanner Ripley, please stand by.
Hello, my name is Nicole Evans, and I am the new curator of art at the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art, so I am following up with Sarah Justice. And I am on this stage now to speak to you again about contemporary art. Why contemporary art? Why is it important? Why should you care about it? What does it have to do with you? You know, I am also a teacher. I am a historian and a writer. And I tell that to my students. Why do you care? Because they ask me that. Why do I care about this? Why do I even have to write a paper about it? Who cares? What will happen later in my life with art? A lot. A lot. Because art teaches you so many things. Every single one of the speakers that came up here today is reflected in art. Artists across time have debated these concepts. War, depression, anger, children being abused, joy of children, joy of life, joy of beauty, hate, acts of crime, war crimes. Everything that we've discussed today, everyone that has been here speaking has been represented in the arts throughout time. Why? Because art is a record of who humanity is. It is an expression of who we are and who we want to be, right? So again, I invite you to care about your community. Thank you. Care about the community. Come to the museums. Support the museums. Support the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art. We need you. We are the original and only contemporary art in Great Falls. We need your attention. Put the word out. Think about us. Always have us in your mind because we are action. Okay? We are action, we are art, we are history, we are politics, we are love, we are beauty, we are children. We are all of those things and we need you to come and see us. How can you stand up for us? Come and visit our exhibitions. Come and attend our classes. Be a part of the world that's coming through because artists have exhibits there and they are telling you about what is happening in this world. Come to see the exhibits. Come to see how artists deal with the pain, deal with the love and the beauty and the depression and all of it. Right here in this very park, look over there at the garden. How did we get that garden? Works Progress Administration, right? The government paid artists so that there would be jobs in this nation. Artists were the founders of beautiful things in this nation. It should be supported by the government, it should be supported by the community because it builds us and it makes us who we are. If not, we wouldn't love the Romans. We wouldn't know anything about Greece. We would know nothing about a cave art. Watch us, take care of us, protect the arts, come to Paris Gibson Square, come to the auction, buy art, love art, and all the artists in Montana who are represented there. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker, Tanner Ripley. Tim Youngren, stand by. Tim, stand by.
Good evening. My name's Tanner Ripley. I grew up in Highwood, Montana, right down the road. After my first 18 years there, I spent 10 years in Bozeman, moved back to Great Falls about 4 years ago. My wife and I love it here. We hope to stay here. We enjoy this community. I've learned a lot from you tonight. I appreciate especially the comment on respecting and honoring your elders. It is my effort to really do that. I appreciate the time, effort, and humility that you put into your talks. As I mentioned, my name's Tanner Ripley. I want to suggest there's 3 questions tonight that each of us must wrestle with. How did I get here? Why am I here, and what happens after I die? First, how did I get here? And now I'll show my cards. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now you might scoff at that and think that nobody plus nothing equals everything, but I want to suggest as you look around at the diversity of humanity here tonight and at creation, even the sunset behind me, as you glance at your fingertips in front of you, that you have to admit that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Secondly, why am I here? And the answer is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Well, how do we do this? Well, first, by knowing and loving Him. And it's been my experience briefly in the realm of civil discourse that conversations about religion at large are generally tolerated. Even the name of God is generally mentioned and accepted, as has been the case tonight. But there's a name. There's a name that as soon as that name clears the larynx, the voice box, within that nanosecond, it elicits either elation or distrust and confusion. That name? The name of Jesus. The name of Jesus. Labels like bigot and Christian supremacists are often not far behind the name of Jesus. So I ain't come up here tonight to invoke pity, not 1 minute of pity. But I do want you to know that the topic of tonight, why I came tonight, what caught my eye was the fact that my children, which are here tonight, 3 of them, by the time they graduate high school, I'm almost certain that they won't be afforded the same opportunity, the same privilege that we wonderfully celebrate tonight. The message will go on, but the messenger will likely be silenced. They'll not be able to humbly celebrate this, that the only way to God is Jesus, and that failure to acknowledge Him, to live for Him, to obey Him, separates you from Him, so that the white-hot holiness of God stands in judgment against sinners like you and I. That unless we accept and embrace His bloody death, His glorious resurrection, this man of Galilee, this God-man, God in flesh, the forgiveness of sins. After we believe that, we can then enjoy Him and glorify Him, like the psalmist says, in your presence, listen, is fullness of joy. At your right hand, pleasures forever. Third, what happens after I die? Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Materialism says that's all. Hebrews 9:27 says it's appointed unto men to die once, and after that comes the judgment. The hypocrisy of those who have said that they follow Jesus, but deny Him by the way they live will be exposed. Everything cleverly despised in this life will one day be brought nakedly to bear. But what about us? Even the hypocrisy of others will not excuse our own. No measure of subjective human goodness will save you or forgive your sins. No, the humble confession, only this: nothing in my hands I bring, simply to the cross I cling. Thank you for humbly listening.
Our next speaker, Tim Youngren. Marcia Luzon, please stand by. Marcia, stand by. Watching the time with you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to try to make this as quick as I possibly can. I am Tim Youngren. My day job is to be the Episcopal priest of the Church of the Incarnation here in Great Falls. I've done that for over 15 years. I'm also a filmmaker, and this past year I had the privilege and the honor to be a part of Converge, E Pluribus Unum, which was a stage presentation done, 3 performances done this past February, and another one in April, and I was tasked with documenting that. And as Tom Moore mentioned, this was an opportunity to have student stories heard. And it was based on over 50 hours of interviews with teachers and parents and administrators and law enforcement personnel. And the stories we heard were just staggering, absolutely staggering. So it was an honor for me to be a part of this project. It was an honor for me to put an hour-and-a-half documentary of the project in order. And I'm just here to announce that we're going to show the documentary again on October 10th. We're kind of in negotiation where that's going to be, but it will definitely be on October 10th, which is also World Hunger Day. So we're kind of combining both events with the movie, Many Stories, One Voice, with World Hunger Day. And we'll get that information out to you, and we hope you all can attend. Thank you so much.
All right, and our last scheduled speaker, Marcia Luzon.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Lozo. I'm the deacon at the Episcopal Church of the Incarnation, where it is my duty and privilege to follow my priest, Tim. Heard a lot of wonderful things tonight. A lot of echoes of what I wanted to say have already been said. I want to talk about our human life, our community life. Humans are built for problem solving. We see what's in front of us right now, and that's where we put our focus and our energy. Now, that's a great help in a crisis, but it neither corrects our path nor reflects our journey forward. Looking down at our feet at today's roadblock means we can ignore where we've been and where we're headed. Probably seen it in the news. 400 years ago, the first captive Africans were brought to America against their will and sold. That date was Sunday, 400 years ago. We are not responsible for that decision or for the misery that it brought to the millions that followed them. We weren't there. We didn't do it. But failing to look at that past is refusing to course correct. For everyone's good, we must look at past human tragedies and say, this was wrong. I'm talking about this one issue, but there are other issues. I know you probably have them running in your mind. We must grieve for the violence and the injustice done to all our days, all our lives since that day 400 years ago when those slaves arrived. We Christians have a term for that, and it's repent. You know what repent really means? What that word means is turn around, go the other way. We can turn around from that past. And when we picture that 400-year-old event as captive Africans arriving in white America, we're making another error. It was not a white America. The European settlers who bought those slaves were a tiny minority perched on the edge of a continent already populated by people who had community, traditions, and religion, and commerce. People the new European immigrants didn't even acknowledge as fully human. We are still paying for that tragedy too. As a person who was Blackfeet by marriage, I know stories that you don't know. It's time to repent, to turn around. We don't want to look at that past littered with errors, but we have the opportunity to do that and look ahead. Everything that we do affects the future. We can change course. Make a promise to yourself, your community, however you see that. The past affects us. We affect the future. Repent, turn around. It's not just about today. The future of absolutely everything is at stake. Peace be with you.
And Marcia was our last scheduled speaker. Jerry has a very brief word of sending us forth. So, Jerry Jennings.
All I can say is wow. Oh my gosh. I mean, these talks tonight just came out of the ballpark. So I thank you all for coming. Thank you from Great Falls Rising. We hope to see you at other gatherings. But one thing I want to mention is this sort of like a town hall? Is this something that we've been waiting for quite a while? Well, anyway, if this is a town hall, let's have more of them. Please be sure you sign in so that we can get information to you. And thank you all. The speakers were terrific. The evening was wonderful. The train going by, the geese overhead, and the children playing on the playground. What a community we have. So thanks for coming, and we hope to see you at others. Elaine?
When does Great Falls Rising meet and where?
If you're signed up, you will get all the information. But Great Falls Rising, for the most part, meets at the Church of the Incarnation in the parish hall. And the church has very kindly and generously given us this space. We meet the last Tuesday of the month. Some months, remember, have 5 Tuesdays. So keep looking at your email. I try not to send out too many. And we hope to see you at another event. Thank you for coming.